During the 16 Days of Action 2022 campaign,
Gosa Girls on Fire and Tech Shack Tactical TV interview ordinary but outstanding women.
Hashtag I am every woman.
In our interviews, we honor outstanding businesswomen who have made a difference in their specific sphere of society to ladies who have overcome horrific gender-based violence incidences.
We believe in action, not activism.
Why are women continually cast as helpless victims?
Bystanders to their own fate, presuming that victimhood is a fait accompli. We are not simply deer in the headlights of gender-based violence.
We can and will stand up for ourselves.
We are not second-class citizens who need special days and men standing up for us.
We say no more.
Activism does not change the minds of predators.
Predators will always be predators, waiting in the dark to claim their victims. Standing on street corners with placards saying that we are against gender-based violence has and never alone make a difference. Take action now, not to be a victim, and be a strong woman. Do not put your trust in anybody else except yourself. Take the example from the strong women in these interviews and be a warrior. Hashtag victim no longer.
Lynette Oxley here for Tech Shack Tactical TV and Gosa Girls on Fire for the 16 Days of Action campaign that we've just that's starting later this month. Hello, and I'm here with Felicity Guest. That's your surname, am I correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you're a social innovator. Tell us a little bit about yourself and who Felicity is.
Sure. So I am a victim survivor of domestic violence. I grew up with domestic violence. My first marriage was intimate partner violence. I got divorced, I got married again, got divorced. And my ex-husband divorced me fraudulently. And it took me into what I refer to as the dark underbelly of the injustice system. So I was navigating my way through all of this, trying to have that divorce set aside. Then I eventually had it set aside and trying to get divorced. And I had a maintenance agreement. And I went, yay, now at least I can enforce maintenance. And then I entered that whole system. And I had this feeling of dis-ease, something I just felt abused by my ex, by the system, and I didn't have a narrative for it. And I'm going, this is crazy. It's not normal. It's normal, but one shouldn't feel like this. So I then started a Facebook group, and I realized that this is a pandemic in this country. And women like myself also didn't have a narrative for what they were experiencing. So, and that I started in 2014, but I started seeing patterns. And then I was able to, with my own lived experience, I was able to put a narrative to it. And I'm going, this is crazy. This is some kind of financial, economic abuse, but it's intersectioned with every other kind of abuse. Nobody's talking about it. It's normalized. So I started working in this, trying to research, trying to understand it, and realized that nobody else was actually doing it as a focus. I mean, there's quite a bit of research, and it's mentioned from time to time. It's in our Domestic Violence Act, but nobody talks about it or focuses on creating awareness, affecting policy, bringing about change. So I packed up my life 4 years ago, and I started doing this work full time. So that's where the innovation comes in, because now what? Now that I have all this information, what do I do with it? My Facebook group is the one aspect of it, because that's a support group, but it has to be more than that. So that's the innovation part. So it's creating awareness, training, and then policy, social behavior. So there's so much. I mean, it's all still in its developmental stage, but yeah, it's a global problem. Exciting.
It's exciting, but it's definitely something that's not been touched that much. Because I've been speaking through the years to people, and the financial side comes up, but it's not something that is pushed to the forefront. And without financial security, a person can't get out of an abusive relationship. It's basically they're trapped in it. Am I correct?
Absolutely. There's so many different aspects, but when I listen to when I listen to people talk, whether it's in the GBV sector or in policy or in the private sector, I can always take it back to this as a major cog. Because if you, for example, so the accepted definition of economic abuse is the harm that is caused and limits one's access to economic opportunities, which is a form of coercive and controlling behavior.
Absolutely.
So that we can kind of get our head around. So what does that mean? It means that it's you are prevented from working, or if you are working, your money is put into joint bank accounts and the control over that by a perpetrator, which then you have to ask for money, you get punished for misusing money, coercive debt, and if you're not working, you're completely financially dependent. So it kind of makes sense that limits your opportunities to leave that relationship. But there are many other facets to this. So let's look at people who are just in relationships, whether they're cohabiting or not, where there isn't a marriage agreement. Similar behavior.
Absolutely.
But what happens when the relationship ends? Because the actual definition is primarily in relationship. It touches on aspects when the relationship ends. So when the relationship ends, that is the most dangerous time. And the interesting thing is, much like victims who only recognize physical abuse, the most dangerous time for them is when they leave the relationship. But financial abuse is intersectioned with every other kind of abuse. And physical abuse is often only the last form of abuse, because one can report it, one can document it, it's visible, it's evident. But all the other invisible, silent forms of abuse are so difficult to understand, to report, and to be protected from, because they're silent and they're invisible. So that's emotional, psychological, financial is one of those. And it can be done remotely. So my anecdotal evidence, as what happened with me, is when you leave, the money is cut off immediately. So what do you do then, whether you are working, depending on joint incomes, and if you're not working, what do you do at that point?
What do you do? What do you suggest to ladies to do? I'm obviously going to give your Facebook page, and we will also put contact details if you're happy with it at the end of the video. But what do you do if you're in that situation? Is there somebody that can help you with this?
So, depending, if there's a lot of physical abuse and one needs protection, yes, there are shelters, but that's emergency protection, which the guidelines are, and most of them only provide for 3 months safety. What happens after that? They're overburdened, under-resourced, they don't get skilled, and in 3 months, what can you do? How do you do skills development? How do you do financial literacy? So that's to help them recover. But if we're still stuck in protection, what happens after the 3 months? You either go back to your abuser because you have no other option. If you had other options, which would normally be family and friends, but that is also limited. So we see strong tendency for victims to go and live with the extended family, but primarily with their parents, and a lot of them are elderly. So then the financial burden gets placed on the elderly family members. Excuse me. So then you get stuck there. How do you get moved beyond that? So the most powerful tool post relationship is if you have children, because the children are the glue that binds you to the abuser. that's co-parenting, as well as financial support. So if you got financial support, and in your settlement agreements, if they were fair and reasonable, your settlements, and they were implemented immediately or concluded immediately, you would have something to move on with your life and recover. But once you get divorced, whether it's, selling the assets and dividing the assets, paying out pensions, that is so protracted. So you're left in a vacuum, again, where you're absolutely vulnerable to everything. So then we go, okay, well, we have a maintenance agreement. Let's go to the maintenance court, because at least if we're getting assistance to provide for our children, then we can have some kind of financial stability, which gives us a bit of emotional and psychological well-being and peace. But our courts are overburdened, under-resourced, and they are, I would say, 65-70% dysfunctional.
Absolutely.
So that's another gap. So people fall through the gaps, and then there are barriers once you've fallen through the gaps. So how do victims recover? And I think that is an area of great concern for us, because we won't change the trajectory of gender-based violence in the main because of that vulnerability. And I have a lot of women who say to me, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have stayed in the abusive relationship and chosen the abuse over poverty, because that's what happens to women. And I mean, that's across socioeconomics. Look, if you live in Bryanston and you end up, on the outskirts somewhere, that's you've been pushed into poverty. And likewise, poverty, what is poverty? It depends on your socioeconomics. And I think our understanding of violence also needs to be expanded. And we have silent violence, we have invisible violence. It's not just physical violence. So economic abuse is incredibly violent because it causes such immense harm to the victim without social security, social support to recover. So you kind of get stuck.
It's very difficult. And the other thing, do you get involved in skills development? Because if a lady is in an abusive relationship, often she's been looking after the children, or the abuser is actually isolating her outside of the work market. So to try, if you've been in a relationship that you haven't worked for 10 years, now suddenly you have to go back into the workforce and you've got no skills.
Yeah, that's a major problem. So again, civil society is picking that up, because we know government budgets are being slashed continuously. So civil society, and there is donor fatigue in civil society. So unfortunately, we have a lack of skills development, because again, our country's in such crisis, highest unemployment amongst women, the least skilled amongst women, more young girls leave school without a formal education. So, and that is like the destitute. So a lot of focus is at that level. But, there's other levels to that as well. I mean, we know the world is moving so fast that if you're out of the workplace for 2 years, you literally are not competitive in the labor market anymore. So do you have the financial means to upskill yourself? Not many do, because you're already economically compromised.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 situation, unfortunately.
Well, you see, that's the whole thing, is everything gets looped back. So having said all of that, I think that as a country, we're in such crisis management, just trying to save women's bodies, that the capacity to think beyond that there's all of this other stuff that compounds this, is pretty overwhelming. So, it's like, well, what can we do? So people tend to only focus, but I believe very strongly that unless we consider the economic protection of women, and that is not just creating more jobs, because if you're raising children on your own, you are still economically compromised. And I mean, our constitution speaks to equality, addressing inherent inequalities. And I mean, that also is layered between the races and in this country. But there can't be any equality without economic equality, and that means economic justice. And most of it takes us back to our family courts, because they are mandated to protect the most vulnerable of society, which is women and children.
But they're broken.
Not.
They're broken, unfortunately. Like the whole your whole justice system is unfortunately broken at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what can we do? We have to try and fix it, but we have to educate them, because if you, for example, I believe that the quickest way to stabilize victims is through the maintenance courts. Because if you don't have children, you can relocate to anywhere in the world. You can chase economic opportunities. But if you've got children, you can't. At times, you can't even leave the province because of the co-parenting agreements. So you're very limited. That we have to focus on getting the maintenance courts rights, because the evidence is that the shortest period in the ideal textbook to get a matter resolved is 3 months from the date of application, if everything goes and there's compliance and there's no resistance, that there is acceptance. But that's not happening. We have cases running 10 years in the maintenance courts, and they just postpone. So I believe that they do not understand the impact that if they postpone a case. And the Maintenance Act says resolve these as speedily as possible. But I think the people implementing this don't understand the impacts, or they disassociate it. They have to understand the impact. It's a given. If you're raising children on your own, and particularly if you're unemployed, you're desperate. This is urgent.
You need to feed them. You need to educate them. You need to clothe them.
There's just no urgency. Yeah, there's just no urgency. So the burden, women in this country, mothers in this country carry a burden that I take my hat off to them to be able to get up every day and still try and get through another day. And you know that resilience is an amazing word, and it's a skill that you develop. However, being resilient is exhausting, eh?
It's very exhausting, absolutely. Felicity, what is your sorry, continue.
Yes, I'm just saying, we have so much work, and I think it starts with just starting to have these conversations, because I find that there's so much disassociation. So you can be a victim of economic abuse, and you can get married or get into a relationship with somebody else, and those women, and there's no judgment or blame, but they move pretty quickly, and they then become enablers if their husband has an ex-partner because they become the priority. So I think one with us as women that we really need to understand is that we need to stop enabling it. If we have children, relatives, we got to have these conversations, because if we don't, we're not going to change
the mindset,
behavior. We're not going to change the behavior, and that's what we have to focus on, changing the behavior.
It's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you. It's an issue that I haven't thought much about. It was touched on one of my other interviews previously, but I have not had this discussion, which has been very, very interesting. Your Facebook page, what is your Facebook page called?
So my group is called Child Maintenance Difficulties in South Africa. We have, over 8 years, we've got to 78,000 people. The people come and go once their cases are resolved, but 78,000 people, and that's the tip of the iceberg. And that tells you what a pandemic it is. And I mean, the stories on there are disheartening. Some people just can't cope because it's triggering and they leave. But it's a community support emotionally, and everybody shares their experience. There are people from the judiciary on there. They observe more than comment. I think they've been stopped from commenting because they used to. social workers, mediators. So it's quite a well-represented group. It's proved quite interesting because I often have people from the judiciary contacting me and say, that's my court. Can you please get that person to come and contact me or come and see me so that we can try and resolve it? So that is a free platform. I also share a lot of my information and my knowledge about economic abuse and the greater impacts. And then we have an NPC called the Institute of Social Development and Justice, and that is to try and get funding for all our community outreach programs, because we have to take this to grassroots level. A lot of people are excluded from this very vital information because they don't have access to data, the language barrier. So that is one of our priorities, is to get funding so we can do more community outreach programs. For the past year, I've partnered with the NPA on a monthly basis here in Cape Town and done workshops. So my part is bringing in the social aspect, the abuse aspect, educating people that way. A lot of people just, if they don't really have maintenance issues, but they wish to find more out, to just follow me on my Facebook page. LinkedIn as well. Got to pierce a corporate veil.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's also the start. And then this year I reached out, the international community reached out to me, and we've partnered with 6 other organizations in 6 other countries, and we're launching International Economic Abuse Awareness Day in South Africa, which will be, the day is on the 26th of November, specifically during 16 days of activism. I sit on the first Economic Abuse Summit on the 15th of November, which is being hosted by Canada to draw more attention from a global perspective. But what that does highlight for me is just like how far behind we are. And the interesting thing is, economic abuse has been on our statute book since 1998. I have found one case law where a perpetrator was convicted for economic abuse in a maintenance hearing in High Court. One since 1998. I have a protection order for economic abuse, and I was able to have my ex-soft arrested, and then it was mediated. It was really dismissed. I cannot do it again because they keep sending me to the maintenance court. I have a 29-year-old that is a dependent for the rest of his life. So I'm stuck in the system, He keeps me here because somebody has to do this. So he kind of keeps me here so that I can learn and stay passionate about it. But internationally, there's just so much. There's a much better social support system for victims, a different language. There's far more collaboration and partnership between all the service providers, the judiciary, the financial services sector. We're still trying to get there, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel now because of peer-to-peer exchange of the work and the knowledge that hopefully we can catch up really quickly.
That's absolutely fantastic. And that's also what Ghosts of Girls on Fire is about. Hopefully to work with different organizations to actually assist people that we come, because we also get in touch with a lot of people that needs your type of services, and we provide different types of things. But hopefully we can work together in the future and make South Africa a better place for women.
Well, that's my commitment. My kids are adults, but I think that there's definitely a huge big shift, and we don't have another 2,000 years. We do not have another 20 years. I mean, women are just so vulnerable that the more we collaborate with each other, we're stronger together. And I love what you people stand for, which is action. Because I always say, you can be a keyboard warrior, you can sit and moan the rest of your life, but unless you take any action, nothing is going to change. And I find that it's hard, and I understand that people are tired and there's so much action needed. But take some action, get involved.
Thank you, Felicity. Can you give a message to the ladies of South Africa and even of the world for the 16 days of action?
Yes, 16 days of action is that we can never take our rights for granted as women. And we've seen that around the world, how with the stroke of a pen, that our rights can be taken away from us. And that's a scary thought. And we have to always be vigilant that our rights are not guaranteed, and to not be afraid to have the uncomfortable conversations, and that, ask for help. Reach out to people. That, yes, while things are tough, that there's always somebody who can guide you to somebody else. But the other thing is, I've learned from my own journey and many other women's journeys, is that lean into this. It's uncomfortable, it's horrible, it's hard, it's emotional, but lean into it, because there are such gems that we can take out of these experiences that give us incredible skills that allow us to apply them in the rest of our lives, and to heal, and to be more gentle with yourselves, because we're all just human doing the best that we can. But if you're tired, rest and build up enough energy and carry on the next day.
I believe that women are warriors and that we can actually fight for our own existence and prosper in it. So thank you very much. It was a absolute fantastic to talk to you, Felicity, and hopefully Gosa Girls on Fire and your organization can work together in the future. Thank you very much for the interview.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me and giving me an opportunity to create more awareness around this horrific form of domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers then.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm a girl on fire. I'm not a victim. A girl on fire. I'll stand my ground. Girl on fire. I've made a choice. I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend. I'm every woman. I have taken up arms and I choose to defend all that I hold dear. Independent and strong, you will not keep me down. You can't break me. I'm a girl on fire. I'm not a victim. A girl on fire. I'll stand my ground. Girl on fire. I've made a choice. I stand proud. Countless hours on the range, I am responsibly armed. I am your equal. I've empowered myself. I have practiced and trained. Fear won't control me. With my sisters in arms, we will make ourselves heard. We'll stand together. I'm a girl on fire. I'm not a victim. A girl on fire. I'll stand my ground. Girl on fire. I've made a choice. I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. We're girls on fire. We're not victims. We're girls on fire. We'll stand our ground. Girls on fire. We've made a choice.